The bidding got heated at the end of the auction, but hey, I was able to come out on top, and now we get to document this. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. At first, it might look like an SG case, but then what on earth is going on up here? This is Guitar of the Week #1. It's not even a guitar. I mean, depends how you want to categorize things, I guess. It's a bass. I've been trying to piece together the entire Guitar of the Week series, but I'm not paying crazy prices for these things. I'm waiting for them at good values. And man, I'm just having bad luck lately with stinky guitars. This was definitely with someone who had a whole lot of dogs in their house. Well, at least that's a little bit better than smoke. But let's go ahead and learn about Guitar of the Week. Guitar of the Week was launched in 2007. It's when Gibson did 47 limited edition guitars in 1 year, which is quite the feat to say the least, as they produced a maximum of 400 of each of those models. There were 22 Les Pauls, 13 SGs, 5 Explorers with 3 Flying Vs, accompanied by 3 Firebirds and 1 single RD. Now to further categorize those, how many of them were basses like we're talking about today? I believe it's 5. There were 2 different colors on the Money bass, which you can check out in this episode if you want to learn a bit more about one of those. There was also a Zebra Wood Winged Thunderbird, and then there were 2 of these SG style basses. Now these are officially known as SG Supreme basses. So, if you don't know about the SG Supreme, those first launched in 1999. What makes those special is the SG now had a figured maple cap, as well as the custom headstock overlay and the cool split diamond inlays. Those things are pretty fancy, and they were produced for a few years, and they just recently came back with different inlays. So for Guitar of the Week, they borrowed the figured maple and threw it on one of these SG basses, which gives you a really unique cross-section right here of the mahogany back, with your maple showing up on top. So that's cool. But the SG bass itself was initially known as the EB-0 or the EB-3. It just depends how many pickups you're talking about. Since we're talking about 2, let's go with the EB-3 history. First coming out in 1961, they have the classic mudbucker and what later becomes known as the SG body style. We documented a 1967 example in this episode. The first one of the SG Supreme basses featured a satin natural finish, so this is not full gloss. And after nearly 20 years, I would say this one has not seen excessive playtime because most of the satin finish is actually fairly intact. Although I suppose the back of the neck has gloss just a little bit from play. You can always compare versus the back side of the headstock versus the feel on the neck. That's just what satin finishes do. But it was week 18 when they did this bass again, but in a gloss finish this time, in this interesting fire fade finish. It's similar to the Les Paul Classic from week #2. So you can choose satin natural or, in my opinion, kind of ugly finish, but gloss. Now, if I remember correctly, somebody has upgraded the bridge on this one. I think he said the original is in the case over here, but conveniently forgot to mention that the saddles are missing. Fantastic. But we've got the owner's manual and the old style pre-pack checklist, at least. It was also supposed to be mint condition, but nah. Giant case bite right there, and some mild impressions on the neck. But hey, the review must go on. So let's go ahead and throw it onto the workbench to take a detailed look at its parts and specs, and then I'll decide whether I want this particular one for my collection or not. The deeper I get into this one, the less I feel like I've won anything. So, I bought this knowing that the bridge had been replaced, but I forgot to think about the consequences of this. Because look at the footprint of the original bridge versus this new one that's on here. It's much larger. When I first unboxed this and looked at the headstock, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. The lacquer is yellowed. Or a lot of these Guitar of the Week models actually came pre-aged. So I was starting to think, hey, that's something else that's cool about this one. Pre-aged lacquer? Take this off. No. They started clear. It's just yellowed with time. So even if you got the saddles and the 3 pieces that are missing to mount it inside the body, you're going to have this weird lighter shadow around it. So at this point, yeah, it's just best to leave it with our super heavy-duty upgraded bridge. I'm not much of a bass guy, but I do know a lot of people throw these things on as a replacement for the 3-post Gibson bridge because they like it better. So that's kind of a nitpicky collector thing, but I do want you to be aware of it in case you become the next owner of this one day. But you heard me right, it is a 3-post system for the original bridge. Then the strings go in there, and then there should be some saddles here. Our new bridge is high mass, weighs about twice as much, and actually bolts straight down into the top. They utilize a large Allen key that thankfully I had a spare of on my drawer, but those are not acting as height adjustment like on the original. That's just to secure that to the top. Then we've got all the room we could ever want for intonation adjustments on our saddles. But even if I had not had that tool to get that off, we would have noticed that something was up here, because when you take your pickup cover off, you can see the same tan line here. But our mud bucker is constructed a bit differently from the vintage ones. So this has the coils standing up on top, whereas the original mud bucker would have the two coils standing like this. So the windings would be facing outward, and then they had your pole pieces here. This appears to be constructed like a blade style pickup, but they left these on here just for the traditional look. Kind of surprised not to see any typical Gibson look back here. I felt the same way with our bridge pickup. So the EB-3s utilize a mini humbucker here, but even that looks a little strange. But granted, I haven't documented many of these modern day ones, so I don't know if this is right or not. We'll have to look inside our control cavity to see if solder's been messed with, because that lead length is really long. But our bridge pickup cavity reads BASP, likely standing for bass supreme would be my best guess. Then inside our neck pickup cavity, it says NA, likely for natural. And you've got those 4 blocks there that act as height adjustments. We can also see where the maple block caps off our truss rod route within the neck that's placed underneath our rosewood fretboard, and a cool cross section of our 2-piece flame maple top. Then joining onto our mahogany body. Nice little cross section there. In fact, that's cool. This route is not deep enough to go through all the maple, except for in the leg areas. Now that I've got that cover back on, maybe those are just to put it in a place, because there's not much height adjustment you can really do with that. Those pretty much just secure that cover to it. So kind of like old jazz guitars, you'll have to adjust your pole pieces if you need more out of a certain string. I was complimenting earlier about how the satin finish has actually maintained fairly well over the years. However, now that I've got it on the workbench lighting and can look at it more in depth, you can see that is not the case. Right here, somebody's hand was resting on the base, they're doing their plucking, and it has naturally buffed it up. That's pretty common on a satin finish, but it's something that should be disclosed. And there's also a little bit of a rough patch right here in the finish. I've seen that stock on Gibson guitars, so I would imagine it left the factory like that. But outside of our deep case bite gouge, which I did go back and look at the photos. I think that happened when the seller was packing and he was hoping I wouldn't notice. That is pretty unfortunate. But then there was some sort of a blemish there. There's also some impressions within that rubbed area that you should know about. And some more impressions over here from somebody who couldn't find the output jack. And I would say the finish is slightly buffed in this area. I think that's my favorite spot on this whole guitar. You got that high concentration of flame right there. The whole edge is just a fun sight. I love guitars like these where you can appreciate all the layers of wood. But speaking of our electronics, you might have noticed 2 pickups, no toggle switch. So that likely means it's 2 volumes which blend them together, and then this will be a master tone. Let's see. So roll the neck off. Yep, we get just the bridge. Now if we roll the bridge off, we get just the neck. And then technically both of them on is the middle, and you can do any type of blending that you wish. So 2 volumes, master tone. Fantastic for a player, terrible for a demoer like me. I'll probably just do neck, bridge, middle, and then some mild tone demonstrations of them in different blendings. But moving on from our 2-piece maple top and mahogany body, we've got a mahogany neck with a rosewood fretboard. This thing came to life after a very mild cleaning and conditioning. I do like the board on this. It's got a nice dark streak right along the base side, then a lot of rosiness now that it's been conditioned. Sometimes people will refer to these as SG standard basses because, hey, they do have the standard Les Paul or SG style trapezoid inlays. Now, do not confuse these with real mother of pearl. They are acrylic, but I've got to say, as far as acrylic goes, these are quite nice. They remind me of the Les Paul classic style inlays. This one even has that classic yellowing to it. This one right here, I could thoroughly be convinced it is real pearl, whereas others have that more acrylic look, but they're all acrylic. Let's check our dimensions. 1.61 inches at the nut. I'm going for 210 at the 12th. 0.85 first fret neck depth. Stays fairly consistent though. 0.92 at the 12th. We'll take it around the 7th just for fun. 0.91. That's crazy how it doesn't really change much between those locations. So to put those numbers into human terms, starts off rather slim feeling as the width, but it's a nice rounded neck profile. But as you come up here, it actually gets significantly wider and transitions more into a C shape, still maintaining some of the chunkiness, but starts to feel a little bit slimmer up here, but not by much. It's mainly just that neck profile shape change. Here's the neck profile at the 1st and 12th fret. You can't really see what I was talking about, but you can really feel it. It just must be the shorter width that makes that feel so much more rounded, because it maintains that C-shaped neck profile. As far as our scale, looks like we're going for 30.5 inches. So within the bass world, these are a little bit shorter. Some Fenders are up to like 34-ish, but it looks like a pretty standard 12-inch fretboard radius. Moving on to the face of our headstock, things are all right up here. I did notice some pretty gnarly scratches over here in the corner. If you get it in the light, you can see it. But the rod itself looks like it should function, but does it actually function? Ooh, that's tight. Had to use 2 hands on that. It does seem to work though. Unlike the fretboard inlays though, this is true mother of pearl. But again, our satin finish up here has yellowed with age. And we've got our crown inlay with our giant shiny tuners that I polished up because they were looking a bit yucky. And now I've got it strung back up. Mention a couple of things. This D string, I don't know if it's the string or the bridge, but it kept popping through the slot until I finally got it wedged in there sideways, and then it was fine. So keep that in mind. Next up, this screw is stripped. It just keeps turning and turning. It never fully secures, but it secures enough that it's not going to cause you an issue, and I was able to adjust the truss rod just fine. It's a little easier to turn when you have some tension on the neck. Setup looks pretty good to me. I just put a little bit of relief in the neck. And now the backside. You get a little bit of mahogany dancing back here. The best way to clean a satin finish that I found and maintain the satin nature, it doesn't necessarily have to be this one, just any type of cheap pump polish. They're good enough for just a quick wipe down. And by quick wipe down, that's what I mean. Don't actually spend any time in a certain area because that's when it'll buff up. Just a quick little wipe down like that and you're good. But there's lots of impressions back here. You can see some right there. A couple of small dings in that area. This one's definitely been played a little bit, but it was relatively taken care of as a player. I mean, you can see your strap around here. And if you think I'm being hypercritical, it's because this was sold as excellent condition. And in my opinion, no. Not quite there. Maybe very good, but this is stuff you should disclose when you sell something. So I want the next guy to be aware of it. But here's our electronics. We've got 3 Gibson branded pots. I mean, the solder work looks good to me, so I'd be willing to believe those are the original set. I'm not sure about this yellow wire though. It's got a solder blob on it like it should be attached and it's come undone. And should you buy this guitar from me and you want me to go ahead and resecure that, just let me know. I can do that real quick. I'm going to leave it as is. Something else you might like to know. The back plate has some slightly deeper scratches in it, as well as some mild ones. We also have 2 more over-tightened screws. Again, they just spin forever. They don't actually fully secure, but at least we've got 2 of them that do. We'll take a second to appreciate our edge on this side now. You can see there's quite a sizable impression over here on that edge as well, and a few more in this area too. But check out this sandwiched area. Rosewood, the rest of the mahogany neck, the maple top, mahogany back, and you also get the neck all on top of that. That's a whole lot of layered woods. And now moving on to our mahogany neck. At first glance, it might look pretty clean, just the slight buffing up of the satin finish. But nope, looks like a ring got it in a scratch-like formation. And there's a couple of dings here, as well as a few more in this area. And again, a lot of that's expected on a satin finished guitar like this. It's just the non-disclosure of it that makes me sad about this one. Because I'm trying to make the Guitar of the Week collection as clean as I can. Or if it's not clean, buy them smart enough that, it makes sense to have it in my collection. But unfortunately, this one does not meet that definition anymore. But we've got our Grover tuners, Made in USA stamp. And what's really cool about this is, remember, this is 2007 Guitar of the Week. This one was stamped on the 6th day of 2007, and being the first in the series, that makes sense. I'm curious what Gibson was doing over here, though. The top of the headstock is like filed down, but I don't think that was actually a ding on the guitar, because it's got the finish over it and everything. And you can see a mild attempt at doing the same over here, too. That must be a manufacturing thing. And I know some of you might be thinking, oh my goodness, Trogly, how are you missing the nasty neck break on this thing? It got completely sliced in half straight up. No. Something about the 2000s era wood grains. You see that quite often. That is just a really long mineral streak line. Although I do not fault you for being slightly scared by that, but I have seen this enough in this era to know, especially because it kind of stops in this general location. Well, you know what? Now that I've said it, it just becomes a little bit less apparent. It nearly looks like a two-piece mahogany neck, but that just continues all the way up. But we are 100% good on this one. I suppose just to be safe, we can do a blacklight test. If that was a repair, unless the entire thing was refinished, you would see the finish be broken and like a long line. I am confident that is not the case on this one. But hey, we got the black light on anyway. Might as well take a look at the rest. Sometimes you can see like sticker shadows, but so far, looking good. Oh yeah, that's confirmation on the top that that's taken in a lot of UV light to yellow. Then our maple top kind of shines through the black light, showing off the evenness of our finish here. But that is a small area of missing finish. I wonder if that occurred at the factory or if it's a ding. Not that it matters. Suppose we could take a look at that other area over here. Just must have not been buffed the same. It's funny the different color of the different woods and how they glow on these natural guitars. Some of it's sweat absorption, other of it's just the color of the wood also shining through our green glow. So if you're curious what this bass weighs, it is 7 pounds, 9.1 ounces. Now remember, if you were to switch back to the original bridge, I would imagine that'll knock off 3 or 4 ounces if that is of any consideration to you. Now let's go ahead. I'll plug this into Logic Pro because I do not have a bass amp, and we can kind of hear how this one sounds. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what this sounds like in a more melodic solo way. But here's just some standard bass lines, starting with our bridge pickup. Neck pickup position. Both together. Now with the pick. I actually quite like this bass. It's fairly versatile. now some mild dirt tones. So there we go, Guitar of the Week #1. What are my final thoughts on this? As far as these SG style basses go, I think this is the most fun I've had with one of these. I really like that slightly high strung tuning I had it in at the beginning. It was just so melodic and cool. I haven't played a bass in probably a little over a year, so maybe that's why I had a lot of fun with this. But I've always found the SG style, EB's basses just to be kind of boring. So this one soups it up just a little bit with the figured maple top. Some of them look better than others, but if you were curious if one of these was a good bass or not, I would say yes. But again, I haven't played tons and tons of basses, but it is certainly a fun one, and you can usually pick these up around the $1,500-ish price point. And at that, I think they're a lot of fun for what they are, if you want one that's just a little bit more fancy than the others. I was actually quite surprised by these pickups. Again, if you were in through a real bass amp, you'd notice it even more, but this isn't as muddy as some of the vintage ones, so I think that's why they changed the construction. And this has some nice treble, but I really actually enjoyed, slightly blending them in between. You can get some really sweet bass tones out of this. Now, as to the ultimate fate of this one, I contacted the seller about the ding on the top, because everything else, I can live with. It's just part of doing business, but I felt that one was a bit extreme. He decided he was just gonna take it back. So you might see this for sale on eBay again if you want to check it out. But all right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed reviewing this bass with me today, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.